Welcome to Skill-Based Art, a learning resource for art students and artist teachers. My name is Martinho Correia, and today I'll be leading you through a drawing of a plaster cast of Caesar using the sight size method. Sight size is a method that was developed somewhere around the 16th or 17th century by portrait painters. It's a process where you set up your sitter right next to your painting or your drawing. So basically what you get is a one-to-one comparison of drawing or painting to the subject. Here we're using a cast. A cast was a learning tool used by all the ateliers and even the early Renaissance studios. All students would start quite young, working from the flat, usually doing drawings of copies of drawings by the maestro, moving to working from frescoes, that is copying the frescoes, and then having casts to draw, so casts of Renaissance sculpture and Greek sculpture. And of course this process became codified in the ateliers of the 19th century. So in today's ateliers in the 21st century use the same process, working with casts to teach students how to draw, but also how to paint from life. So today we're going to be using pretty simple tools: our gesso cast of Caesar, a eraser, a 2B pencil, and a knitting needle. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is to set up our drawing board and cast in relation to each other properly so that you get a good drawing. What I'm looking for is the drawing board to be totally straight up and down and sitting about half to 3/4 of the way behind or into the cast. So my drawing board is right through here. It sits somewhere in the middle of the cast. If it comes it can come a little bit closer or a little bit further away, and it will just change the size of the drawing in relation to the cast, its actual size. Next thing I want to do is I want to do a plumb line, which is a straight up and down line that's going to be drawn on the paper, and that I'm going to be looking for on the actual cast. These are points that might line up, and I can use as some reference points when I'm doing the drawing. So to do that, a good way to do that is just to make sure the edge of your board is straight up and down. You can also use a level. All I'm doing is measuring from the edge of my board in this case, and assuming the edge of my board is straight up and down, and I'll just use these lines here as a guide. So I measured just the length of my knitting needle in from the edge of the board. That should get me pretty good. Somewhere up here, somewhere down there. I'm not using a ruler, I'm just using my freehand. So then I want to come back and I can just check with my knitting needle, make sure that that line is straight up and down. So if I'm here holding the knitting needle up, those points are lining up okay. And the other thing is to make sure that where I'm standing is totally perpendicular to the board. So if the board is like this, I need to be looking at it totally perpendicularly. Right? So I'm stepping back. And I'm just checking at the spacing of the easel legs to make sure that distance between the spacing of the legs between the front leg and the back leg is equal on both sides. And I'm ready to go. So first thing I want to do is to decide on my plumb line on the cast. And for where I'm sitting, there's a nice line going through the middle of his face, which kind of touches this indent up here and cuts through his nose and the middle of his lips. That's one good one. There's often more than one plumb line. Another good one can be the corner of the eye socket here, or the corner of the nose, or the corner of the mouth. You're trying to get as many different points as possible lined up when you're holding up your knitting needle or your plumb line to the cast. Let's see. Right, I'm going to go with the one that this high point here comes through pretty much from where I'm standing goes through the middle of the lip here. You know, some of these points on the eye, close to the corner of the eye as well. Actually, I'm going to move over a little bit. Instead of that high point, I'm going to take that point on next, one step down from the high point. So next thing I want to do is to mark off the top and bottom. So I'm just holding up the plumb line here to mark off my point at where the top might be. I'm kind of guessing. So I'm basically holding this up and going across from the cast onto my paper. I'm measuring it across from the top of the cast onto my paper to check the line I just placed, and it looks pretty good. I'm making sure that I'm holding my knitting needle horizontally. Next thing I want to go and mark the bottom of the cast, where it's, again, just looking directly across from the bottom of the cast along the horizontal line of my knitting needle to where it's hitting the paper, somewhere about here. I come back and check that. So just like a good carpenter, you want to measure twice and cut once. So measuring a couple times. It's a little high. Could come down a tiny bit. So what I'll be working on, focusing on today, is the big block in. So getting the big portions and the shapes placed before any refining is done. So check that bottom mark again. It seems pretty good. The next thing I want to do is to measure totally vertical between the top point and the bottom point. So I'm measuring on my cast, placing the top of the knitting needle at the top of the head of Caesar and my thumb on the bottom, and bringing that across, and that measurement should be the same if I did it correct. It seems like it's a little bit big on my drawing. So I'll have to double check those marks, double check the bottom and the top. The top might come down a tiny bit. So I'll go for checking my measurement again, just from top to bottom. Looks pretty good. Good enough for now, we'll say. Alright, so I know that this point here, my plumb line, is not the highest point. The highest point is just the point next to it here. So plumb line kind of cuts through there. And then from there it drops straight down. It touches the corner of the eye on the left, and the nostril on the left, and the high point of the top lip on the left. So keep that in mind. Now there's different ways you can do it. You can go and place some big vertical alignments, or you can set the outside proportions. What I'll do that is I'll measure the extreme outer points. So that's going to be a measurement from my plumb line, which is the corner of the eye, out to the edge of the ear here, and out to the edge of the ear on the left. So I know my plumb line is sitting, if I move it down from the top, sitting right on the corner of that eye on the left. I measure from that point out to the ear, and then I bring it onto my paper, put the point of my knitting needle on the plumb line, and my thumb is going to indicate some point somewhere around here. So I'll come back and check that. Pretty close, could go it a little bit. And all that's telling me is just that's where the, more or less where the ear is going to be. Somewhere around there. I can do the same thing on the other side. Just from my plumb line out. Right somewhere around here. Come back and check that. Could come in a little bit. Now what I'll do is I'll check the distance between those 2 points to make sure that they're okay. So I'm just measuring from ear to ear and bringing that across, and hopefully it's somewhere in the ballpark. Yep. Looks like it could be a little bit bigger on my drawing. So I'll just double check which one's not quite working. So I'll move this guy back out a bit. Let's see how that does. That seems to be working. Okay, so that gives me the outer extremes. Next thing I'll do, I think, is I'll start to indicate maybe the tops of the ears, because the tops of the ears line up nicely with the top of the brow of the eye. So those points lining up, very useful things to place down. You want to try and get as many things lining up as possible. So I can just use my knitting needle scanning across horizontally. See where those points are. That's going to be where the ear kind of touches the hair. The other side. Looks all right to start. This point's going to be somewhere over here as the ear comes in a bit. And the brows, they're slanted, but we can just get a general placement of them. So let's do our somewhere just above those points. They're just slightly above the ear points. Or they start off just slightly above the ear points. So this eye point kind of starts there and then angles up. So that's that corner there on the eye. All right, may as well get the bottom of the ears and how they line up with the nose. Somewhere around there. Come back and check that. It looks like it makes the ear a bit big, so I can see this right away it's in the wrong spot. Higher up. So I'm thinking very objectively. I'm just trying to place high points and low points. I'm not thinking about the shape of an ear or what a nose looks like. I'm just analyzing in terms of angles and lines, really. Placement of high points and low points. So it really looks pretty good. Yeah, the ear's about the same spot. We can also come back and check these distances, measuring these smaller distances, but the smaller the measurement, the more the margin of error is. So always try to get big measurements to start with, and then you can refine as you get more and more information. You can refine, and your eye eventually will be more accurate than the measurement. But at this stage, I'm just getting these big kind of placements. So yeah, ears more or less in the right spot. They look a little bit big, so I'm just gonna do a measurement. Yeah, they seem a little bit. So I'm just going to recheck the top and bottom. You can also use a thread. So even though it's not quite long enough, you can use a thread like this and just measure across. It's longer. It looks like the ears need to come down a little bit on the top. A tiny bit. So that measurement wasn't quite in the right spot. Alright, we'll go with that. And then of course the eyes will have to come down a bit. This will come down a tiny bit. So the type of line I'm using too, it's not a sharp, specific line. Usually when you're writing, you have a point that's like this, but here what we're doing is we're using what's called a drawing point, and we're holding it like so, so that when you place your hand down, it's just a light mark that's being placed, pivoting on the knuckle of your finger. So it's something like that. We call them ghosty, sketchy lines versus something that's harder. So it just makes it for a nice look. It's nothing too distinct or harsh at this point. Easy to erase and easy to move around too. So then for the nose is somewhere, the shadow here on the bottom of the nose is somewhere above the line cutting across the ears. And then I just want to check my plumb line. Yeah, so the plumb line comes down here, the nose shadow is somewhere around here. And it cuts up to the plumb line somewhere around there. Okay. Next thing I could do is probably get the chin, where the chin is. Come back and check that either with the the string just allows you to have a nice longer horizontal. Looks pretty good. I'll check it against the top of the cast as well. So from the top of the cast to the chin. Looks pretty good. Nicely too with our plumb line, at this point here at the plumb line, it starts to turn up. So I'm starting to put this change of direction here, over here to change of direction. Here's what I've got here. So I'm just, analyzing these in terms of like, there's a straight line and then what's the angle that's coming off there for the chin. All right. I want to check now also maybe the distance from the chin to the bottom of the cast. Looks okay. All right, something different. I think I'll just do a little bit more of the outside of the cast. So the distance between the ears. So this is the side of the cast here. And actually the ear actually drops down, something like that. On the other side, it's a little here. It's angling up a bit. Here too, the ear kind of angles down. Then if you look at, there's a real sense of blockiness here. From the side of the head, it goes up, changes direction there, changes direction again there. So these big angles, they're in nature, they're not as obvious. These casts have been, they're interpretation nature, so they've been turned into works of art for us, which makes it really important to study them, to see how master artists worked in the European tradition with nature and interpreting it into a work of art. So looking for the structure, right? The structure of this figure, the big straight lininess that gives it the strength of character that we see. Okay, so we could put some of those points in. So measuring across, just going to do horizontal alignments. So right, it goes somewhere to about here, then it goes over. Probably a little bit too much of an angle. To about here. I do want to just double check to make sure I'm keeping enough width. So just reestablishing my plumb line and seeing if it's far enough out. It looks like it's okay. On top, the plumb line can come somewhere like this. And that last little bit is somewhere in here. Keeping this, really loose. This is just approximating. You're thinking very much like a sculptor at this point, chiseling out the big outside edges. So I'll leave that. I'm going to maybe bounce around. I like to kind of change things up, not focus too much on one area. Try to bring the whole drawing up as a unit. So I'm going to come down and place the outside of the jawline. So we know where the bottom of the ears are, that's where the jawline starts. We can use the vertical of the knitting needle to see how far in from the outside of the cast, or the top of the ears, how far in that is. So I'm just measuring this distance to see more or less where the chin is, somewhere down here. Somewhere about here starts. So we got that displacement method. I can also measure in from my plumb line. So the more information you get, of course, the more ways you can take measurements and the more accurate your drawing, hopefully, will get. So it looks like that was a little bit too much. Okay. This needs to come out a tiny bit. And then this will come over a little bit. That should... And you can check that from my plumb line. So when I'm measuring, I have to make sure that my vision is perpendicular to the cast and also perpendicular to my knitting needle, that the knitting needle is not skewed anyway, right? And I just bring that measurement across, see how it works. Looks like it needs to go over even a tiny bit more. Then I'll just measure across to get the other side. See how that lines up with what I have on the other side. All right, seems pretty good. This jawline kind of comes in from about there. This has to come down a little bit more. And then I've got the neck, so I'm just gonna eyeball where that neck is. It's somewhere about here. Let's see it down here. Then the neck on the other side, I can just measure straight across from that point where the neck and jawline meet. Looks like I've come in a bit too much. Yeah. So at least to come in a tiny bit. What I'll just double check is how far over my plumb line is. So the joint, the neck is somewhere over here. More like this. And this is not quite as angled in. Yeah, maybe I'll place the lips in the bottom of the shadow on the nose. Might be good. That. It's a bit thick. I can just see by looking with my eye that this needs to go up a little bit. shadow cuts across here. Right. I'm just going to try and finish drawing up the width of the nose. Here. Comes across, it kind of comes up here and across. And bounce up and get the bottom of the eyes. Some of this I could probably just do by eye, just using my eyes to measure. So this kind of comes down and a bit. Just could angle up a little bit more. And then I'll place the outside edge of that eye socket on the left is pretty much in line with the top of the ear. It just comes under the top of the ear up there. It sits about here. A small measurement, but I can just take my knitting needle and just see if it's in the ballpark. Maybe a little bit big. So now I'm going to continue on with I think the outside of the cast on the right. We'll get some of that placed in. So I'm just going to mark off the big change of direction with the ear. So from this point here, there's a change of direction. The side of the head moves in a little bit. About that angle, yeah. About to that point that I've marked. I'm going to double check that. It's pretty close. Just go ahead and put that in. And then from that point, there's another change of direction from here to here, and then up to the top. That point, about here-ish. It's all very general. You want to try and be accurate, but you refine the drawing as it goes along. So it seems pretty good. There to there. Better to have this line curving slightly this way. All right. Maybe I'll just finish blocking in the outsides of the ears. The earlobe is about that wide, something like that. We're just going for the big, simple construct, right? So just getting in just the big edges as if you're a sculptor. That doesn't look quite right. So just getting the width of the ear and the side of the cheekbone. There's out pretty good. A bit more. Alright, let's get the lips in. So if you're wondering for what to do next, always say, well, what's obviously missing. So lips are pretty important. We can get those in. I can again do my horizontal alignment. Looks like they're very close to the bottom of the nose. The bottom of the nose might need to go up a little bit. What I'll do is I get the little half shadow just under his bottom lip. Looks a bit low. So I can also measure up from the chin. It's measuring it okay. Sits. Kind of ends about there. As we move into these smaller measurement, your eye is going to be more accurate than the measuring. Could just place the lips using my eye and how far it is away from the shadow. So the high point of the lip is there, sitting right on the plumb line. It's down, and then the other on the other side. It's a little bit higher. So I'm now looking at these tiny negative shapes, spaces between the actual shapes that I'm drawing. And then how far out does that go? Somewhere about here. I can see how that corner of the lips or mouth on the left, where it lines up with how far away from my plumb line it is. Or just eyeball it. Put something down so I have something to respond to. It looks a little bit big considering, yeah, it comes just a bit past the corner of the nose. So closer to there. Then I can also take a measurement from that point to the corner of the jawline to make sure that's okay. Yeah, that seems all right. And from the jawline to the other corner of the mouth. See how that lines up with the corner of the nose. It's just slightly to the right of that corner of the nose. First guess here was pretty good. Okay, so we got the general placement of the lips blocked in. We don't need much more information than that. What's missing? Side of the head on the right, this hairline. I'm going to put the hairline in quickly. Somewhere around here. Checking just, heights and widths and stuff from the eye to the hairline. Looks pretty good, and then from the hairline to the top of the head, this looks pretty good, pretty close. Did you say close enough for this stage? Okay, I'm going to put the neck on the right side. That should be fairly easy. Just this small distance here, and then the neck starts coming out somewhere around there. I can look at the negative shape between the ear and the neck, what that looks like. That can help me get the right shape. It's a little bit too much angled. And then how far down does it go? Oh, kind of lines up at the bottom of the chin. About there. And then how far out does it stick into the ear? So I'm lining it up just with the ear to see how far out it goes. Not too much actually. Let's see here. And then from there it angles down and in. That angle's too angled. It's a little bit more towards vertical. Then where the low point is on the neck here. That's way too low. Should be higher up. Higher. Somewhere about there. I have to make sure that I get that new angling enough. So that lines up properly with what's happening over here at the bottom of the neck. So from the plumb line, this comes out a little bit more, and then it angles up with this guy over through there. Alright, he's starting to look like something. I think the jawline will be the next thing. Jawline comes over And it lines up at the corner of the nose about there. Before it then angles up. Let's double check that. I made it a little bit too long. It means perhaps my point on the left is not right. Yeah. It needs to come a little bit more this way. Just so I get enough of a chin on him. Then up to that high point here. So now I'm moving between like these horizontal measurements, but also just using my eye to see spaces and distances between points. You know, negative space, spaces in here, this distance. Make sure all these are looking like they're close to being what they should be. The shadow starts here, in line with the corner of the mouth. So this comes in a bit, goes up like this, and this comes down like that. All right, see the shadow on the left. Comes up and cuts across here a little bit. And lines up with the jawline. So I want to check overall the width across the neck there and make sure that's okay. It's reading a bit wide. This needs to come in a little bit. Come in a tiny bit too. Whole piece needs to come over a little bit. So now it's starting to be a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle, trying to get these pieces all to fit together, except you also have to draw the pieces and then make them fit together. Just get the very bottom of the shadow of the neck, the cast shadow. Looks a little bit big. Down somewhere. This line continues down to about here. This low point's about there. These kind of connect up. That. Then on the right side comes down and in. So the more information you have, the more things you will see that need to be fixed, or hopefully you're more not you'll be confirming your guesses. Still working very generally though. Get the eye on the right placed. So the space between the eyes, I'm just going to eyeball that because it's fairly small space. You can measure it as well. Bring it in a little bit. the high point of the shape on the right is a little bit below the shape on the left, so it should be just a little bit lower. Okay. And that angles down. And we want to get the width of that. We can measure out from the ear in to see where it ends. Would be one good measurement. There. Can double check that, just measuring the total width of the eye. A little bit wide. Still seems a bit wide. And then the bottom of that shadow shape, or at the top of it, sits just under the high point of the ear. And this shadow actually comes up on the side of the head there. You can start to place some of these other shadows in the hair. Top of the shadow is somewhere around here. It's almost into halftones, just on the point of falling into shadow. Right. Just want to make sure I have enough space between that shadow and the outside. Not quite yet. It needs to come in a bit. Oops. Tiny bit more. Bottom of the eye, shadow is somewhere about there. Comes down a little bit past that shadow on the left. And for this stage, we can just simplify this to come straight across. You just want to get the general placement. All the, what's called the articulation would be the next step. Refining from this big statement. Little shadow in the ear there. Let's go down a bit more. You can see the tool, the eraser is an important tool, is to move lines around easily and quickly. So if you're working very generally like this, you're not specific, it's very easy to erase a line. You're not delineating a bunch of small detail, it's just an edge. So it's one straight line. If it's in the wrong place, you erase it and move it over a bit. Right, so I'm still not sure about the eye on the left. It looks a bit big. Yeah. Spacing in here is not right. So taking a measurement. Just to come over a little bit. Just, it's right from my plumb line, which is the corner of the eye. Yeah, that's a bit better. This point needs to move up a little bit. So this can come up a bit. The bottom of the eye on the left part of that is lower than the part that's closer to the plumb line. I have to drop this a little more. It would be too simplified. I need to go and actually delineate a little bit more the eyeball. So I'm just going to finish up some of these hairline bits and bring us to the end of the construct stage. This could be an important line. Just helps us keep an eye on the width of the temple and the width of the eye. It's pretty close. About here. Just going to delineate the hairline here with these ghosty, sketchy lines. They're not shadows, they're halftones, just to give us a little bit more information. Over actually to here. Made the width of the hair a bit too thin. This little bit of shadow is really just on the rest of that ear. The side of the cheek on the right is halfway between shadow and halftone. I'm going to just call it halftone for now. And for this stage, just block in the edge of the shadows being about here. This is not getting shaded in yet. The next stage will be the articulation, which will go in and add more small details and refine all these shapes. So that's it for now for the construct stage.